Hi, Tim.
Hello, Stephen. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
Good, nice to see you. And
Yeah, good to see you.
yeah, and thank you for joining on this Friday morning. Um, I think you're doing some really interesting research around mindfulness at the moment, aren't you? So yeah, I'd just love to hear a bit more about what you're working on.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So I'm looking at the challenging experiences that can sometimes be related to meditation,
Okay.
um, and that covers quite a broad range of experiences. And it might be very, very mild, such as feelings of anxiety. But it can also range right to the extreme where people are having what you might term psychotic-like experiences. And, often these are related to very intense forms of meditation. Um, and yeah, we're looking at kind of why that might occur, and sort of what people also think of those experiences as well.
Mm. Yeah, because I guess depending on how they approach them, if they might have a negative experience if they are afraid, or if they're not approaching it in the right way, maybe.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an open question at the moment, and this is why we want to do this research is to understand that better. Um, there are some studies now looking at this,
Mm.
and one interesting study that comes to mind. It wasn't very in depth in terms of looking at the phenomena and break it down. But what it was what is known as a, a review article looking at all the different studies using mindfulness-based therapies,
Mhm.
and looking at how people report adverse experience related to these therapies. So how the researchers are reporting them, and then the prevalence of those.
Okay.
And what they found was it would seem to be a similar rate to psychotherapy, for example. Um, so I can't remember the exact figure, but within psychotherapy, when you have sort of counselling and things like that, you can bring up things that are challenging, and
Mm.
you can have it can feel difficult, because people are dealing with personal things that they might want to change perhaps.
Yeah.
So they were looking at it in terms of that. Um, but what I want to do is understand why that happens, what the mechanism is that leads
Mm.
to these different types of challenging experiences. Um, and the important thing I think as well to stress is that when we talk about a challenging experience, we're not necessarily saying it's like a negative thing
Mm.
overall, as it were. It might be unpleasant and hard to deal with, but there could be meaning that's drawn from that for the individual.
Yeah.
So I think that is important to stress. I'm not trying to, for example, suggest that you know that we should stop meditating because it can bring up some challenges, for example. So
Mm.
it's just trying to understand it in more detail in the mechanism, and then how people cope with it, and how they rate it either positively or negatively. That's part of what we're looking at as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really interesting. I'm currently on an MSc course in mindfulness studies. And as
Mm.
part of that, there's like an experiential element. So we get together for retreats, and particularly at the moment, we're looking at compassion. So we're doing compassion practices, and that in particular, I think, has brought up for a lot of people um, maybe more challenging
Mm.
experiences, or bringing up things from their past, or maybe even linking to things that are currently happening. Excuse me, currently happening in their lives, and compassion can lead to that. And I think mindfulness and compassion kind of go hand in hand, right?
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and mindfulness is bringing attention, or making us more aware of what's going on in the present moment, and
Yeah.
sometimes that can highlight things that might not be so pleasant.
Mm.
Yeah, but then compassion can also add a warm light to that, which makes it more pleasant. But yeah, the whole link with compassion and suffering and recognizing the suffering of others, which can lead to feelings of not such a pleasant nature, maybe.
That's interesting. It's an interesting way to look at it. Certainly with what you're saying, it makes me think about this. Actually, this article I read recently by David Fresco, who's really interested in decentering, and decentering is a mechanism that he hypothesizes is leads to the benefits that mindfulness can bring for our mental health. And just something you said there about becoming aware of processes that you're not necessarily aware of. So you might be, in a sense, paying attention to things that perhaps you weren't paying attention to or weren't as aware of. I mean, there could be potential there for challenges to arise. And with decentering, the mechanism. Have you heard that term, decentering?
I don't think I have, no.
Yeah, it's I hadn't actually heard of it until I started digging deeper into the mechanisms of mindfulness, and I found this. And there's a questionnaire that you can do as well to sort of to use it for research or to see where you sit if you're curious. But it involves a few different things. So meta awareness is one aspect of decentering. So becoming aware of the processes that are occurring in your own sort of mind, if you like. And another aspect of it is not getting caught up in these thought processes. So that can relate to ruminative thought. So not getting caught up in this cycle of negative thought and being able to sort of break out of it, to see it with meta awareness, to see it's happening, and then not to get caught into the loop. And then the other aspect is being able to not be emotionally sort of triggered by it as well. So obviously that will take a lot of practice, and this is speculation when I say this, but you can see how perhaps along that journey, as you're learning to get to that stage, that challenges will arise, because you're starting to pay attention to these internal workings, to your emotions, to the thoughts, and becoming aware of those. And that's like holding up a mirror to yourself, isn't it? Yeah. And that's what I want to understand more. I understand that more, that process more. So that's one aspect of what I'm interested in. Yeah, but you just made me think of that then when you said that.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I feel like it can lead down so many avenues, So what exactly are you researching right now?
Okay, so what we've done, the first thing is, so I'm actually working with Elsa Foragnon. So excuse my pronunciation. She is a neuroscientist at Plymouth University, and she is head of the stimulation lab, the neurostimulation lab at a place called BRIC, the Brain Research Institute. So that's kind of linked with Derriford. So she's very like neuro, and I came at this wanting to understand the neural mechanisms, linked to challenging experiences. So that's a study that we're going to do this year. So we're going to do an fMRI study, and the details are yet to be planned out fully, but we've started designing that. So we're hoping to do some kind of maybe meditation intervention for a couple of weeks, and then have a look at the brain activity in people who have taken that intervention. So that's one study we're planning out at the moment. We've also got a study that's running online. So it's a big online survey, which you very kindly shared for me, which is great. So we've recruited quite a few people through Medito. And in that survey, there's quite a few what are known as psychometric measures. So things that measure, for example, we've got one on that measures like depressive symptoms, anxiety, also the more unusual experiences that we're talking about as well, including, hallucinations, and there's also the decentering questionnaire in there too. And then some lots of questions about meditation habits, including meditation types, like techniques, so different techniques, and the motivations for people using different techniques. So very interested in why people meditate and what they're aiming to achieve from that. And also some history as well. So we're asking about also about people's mental health, because I think that could be an important thing to consider as well. And hopefully by gathering all this data, we can start to understand if there are certain things that might more readily lead people to having challenges with meditation, including meditation techniques and their mental health history and all these things. And also, like I said, we've got questions on coping as well. How do people cope with challenges that they face? And also, how do people evaluate these experiences? Do they think that they are, even if they are, let's say, unusual outside of our normal experiences, they might be positive. They might have rated them as positive. So we've got that as well. We're saying, was it positive or was it distressing? So we're hoping, to get a bit more understanding of that running into the next study, which is going to be looking at the brain.
Okay, great. And so, are you still recruiting for that online survey?
Yes, we are actually. We're trying to get as many people as possible. I'm not sure how many we've got now, but it's probably over 400. But it'd be great to push that even higher. So we've got basically, we want to capture the variety of different techniques that are used out there. So we want to get a lot of people, so we get a whole swathe of different meditation habits and experiences. So that's accessible via a link that you've shared for me, and I've also shared it via my own Twitter. I don't know if there's any way of linking something in the description.
Yeah, we'll put it in the description. Yeah,
that'd be fantastic if we can have a few more people before we then analyze the data, which we're looking at doing in another maybe month or 2 months. I think we're going to sort of leave it live. But that would be fantastic.
Okay, cool. And the one that's actually involving the fMRI scanners, I guess. Are you still recruiting for that? But I guess that would only be in Plymouth, right, in the UK?
It's in Plymouth, that's right, in the UK. Yeah, we are still recruiting for that. Yes, and I'm just trying to think. What I have got. Yeah, so I have got another link for that actually for what we call screening survey. So it just asks you a few questions related to the study. Are you happy to sit in the scanner for, lie in the scanner, for an hour? And a few questions about whether you have metal, certain types of metal in your body, for example, because it's using a big strong magnet.
Right.
Yeah, so there's like a few safety questions, but I mean it's a very, very safe procedure. The only caveat to that is if there's metal that is magnetic, then that can cause a problem. But it's very, very rare that people do have that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we can add that link in the description too. But I'm aware that we have quite an international audience. So how many are from Plymouth? So
well, that's okay. Yeah, of course. I mean, the survey is at the moment the number one priority because I need the most people for that. I think that the fMRI, we're probably only looking at recruiting about 40 people.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the online study is just as many as you can possibly get, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As many as we can get. Just we've got a real big variety, a big a representational sample, basically, of meditation population. That's what we're after.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So yesterday I had a call with Dr. Daniel Ingram that you kindly put me in touch with, and it was a fascinating conversation. So you can see that when we put that up on YouTube as well.
Awesome.
But one thing, because I noticed at the start of this conversation, you mentioned people having psychotic episodes. But one of the things that Daniel was talking about was how sometimes these unusual meditation effects could possibly be misidentified as psychotic episodes, and therefore people could be treated as if they have some kind of mental illness, but it's actually quite a natural emergent phenomena. So yeah, how would you go about distinguishing between the two, or is it something you've given much thought to so far?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. So when I first got interested in this subject, it was after a friend of mine had a psychotic episode linked to meditation. And, looking back at it, the way he was treated initially, I don't think it necessarily helped his situation. So he was sectioned, but he was like in a police cell first for quite a while, which is very distressing, So I think, just generally speaking, there's probably a lot of things we can do to improve the way we approach mental health in this country. The provision of mental health services, they're very stretched, aren't they? In the UK, and a lot of that comes down to money and things. It's not the individuals in the services; it's the amount of funding there is, and that's unfortunate. And I think a lot of people don't get the treatment and the attention that they need. So that's the first thing I'd say just about mental health generally. So if you're having any kind of challenge, you need the right support, essentially. So regarding meditation and how and these challenges that we might call psychotic, I think the definition is important. Like, it's like you say, and when I first started looking at it, there were some papers on this, and not very much research, but one paper had 10 case studies of what it termed meditation-induced psychosis. That was the title of the paper, and there was a commonality between these cases. And I should stress this is only a small number of cases as well, so it's difficult to draw a firm conclusion. But what it was tending to say was that people might have psychotic-like experiences related to meditation, but that they're often very short-lasting episodes. So transient, they term them transient psychotic episodes, and then afterwards they didn't seem to come back if the person refrained from doing whatever it was that triggered it in the first place. Okay, so that was just that was initial study. So when I came into this, I was thinking, yes, there could be something different about these types of episodes that are linked to meditation. But really, I don't honestly know. And I think it's really important to understand it better, which is a big motivating factor for this. So another important thing to say, I think, about psychosis is, so you talked about it being an important part of the journey for meditators. On a certain path might have certain challenges, and that's part of the process. Well, there's also research looking at how people deal with their psychosis and their psychotic-like experiences, and how people might make meaning from those experiences as well. So, experiences not related to meditation that are termed psychotic can also become meaningful for individuals and become transformative in certain circumstances. But there's also people that just find it really distressing and don't want it. So it's, why is this happening? What are the differences? So, yeah, lots of questions. I feel like there's more questions here at the moment than there are answers on the table. But I completely hear what you're saying, and I think that is a really important thing to consider. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's really great to hear that you're looking into this and hopefully find some answers.
Yeah.
So what actually brought you to this topic? So you mentioned your friend who had the psychotic episode. Did that set you on the path to studying this kind of thing?
Yeah, it did actually. I think it was the main factor. So the same friend, he had introduced me to meditation, to mindfulness meditation, probably back in like 2008, I think, something like that. And I started to practice it, maybe not quite daily, but I was practicing it with him, and I found it really beneficial at the time. And I then went to university. I think it was like 2010, and I started learning about the research into mindfulness meditation and how people were using it to reduce their anxiety and depression. And I was really interested in that, fascinated by that, and I started to read more about the brain-related changes and activity related to meditation, which was just starting to build, if you like, around that time. And then when he had this episode linked to meditation, I was very, very confused by it, and I didn't understand quite what was going on. And then referring to the scientific literature, there wasn't a great lot on it. Like I said, there was that one study. It was case studies, so no real in-depth investigation or explanation of the mechanisms or what might be going on in terms of brain activity and things like that. And so at that point, I decided that I'd like to look at this further, basically. And then when I did my master's in 2013, as part of that, I did a literature review on meditation and difficulties related to meditation. And then that led me to writing a proposal for a PhD, essentially, back then. And then it's taken me a few years to find somebody willing to be a supervisor for the project and take on the challenge. So I'm very grateful to Elsa for doing that.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Because one of the things I've come across in my studies is that there might be a lack of knowledge around negative experiences, because a lot of the studies relating to meditation don't even kind of broach the topic. So if it's a study involving a survey or a questionnaire, they ask about lots of things, but they don't even ask the question, did you experience anything that you might perceive as negative? So I think it's important for studies just to start kind of asking that question, because if they don't ask, then I'm guessing the meditator isn't going to just offer that information, and if they do, there's no way of recording it in a formal way. So we have a PhD student at Medita Foundation at the moment running a study as well, looking into the benefits of doing the 30-day challenge on our app. And we added that question in, just asking whether there's any negative experience that came out of it. I think it's important that we start giving the space for people to tell us that information as well.
Oh, I mean, that's really great that you've done that as part of that study. And yes, like you say, what the literature review I referred to earlier by Farias and colleagues, looking at these therapies and the adverse effects, one of the things they said was exactly that it could be maybe underreported, and so we don't know the actual prevalence, because in studies they're not building that in to their study to collect that information, and that seems kind of crazy, doesn't it? Because you want to understand the whole picture. So I think maybe there's a worry that it will put people off meditation, but I actually think the opposite. I think if you're fully informed about something, then you can go into it with your eyes open and be aware of what's going on. And if you do start to have maybe some challenges coming up, then you'll recognize it perhaps earlier, and perhaps also you can then direct yourself to things that might help you to cope with those, or to understand them. So, that for me is the real benefit of this.
Yeah, and it's actually something that I've been thinking about recently. In the Medito app, I feel like we need to add signposts or resources for anybody who experiences a negative situation to help them. In my conversation with Daniel yesterday, Willoughby Britton came up. I know she's one of the leading names in people who look at this area of negative experiences. And so she has Cheetah House, right? Do you know about that?
That's right, yeah.
Where they help people to deal with any negative experiences that might come up. So maybe we'll put a link to that down in the description as well, so people can check that out.
I've actually got a link to that at the end of my survey.
Okay, cool.
Support. Willoughby Britton. She's done a lot of research in this area, and still ongoing. It's ongoing. A lot of interviews with Buddhist meditators, trying to really understand in depth what their experiences are, and I think that's very important. So the questionnaires and surveys are great as well, but you need both. I think you need the qualitative approaches too, to understand the kind of the nuances of those experiences. And so, if you check out, I can't remember so it's Brown University. I can't remember the name of the lab that she's part of. It might be the Britton lab, but there's lots of publications on there. Actually, you can, if you click on publications, there's a whole load that you can just read for free, open access. So that's really interesting work, and I've read a lot of those myself.
But it is interesting because with Medito, the app's been downloaded over 1 million times now, and we have lots of feedback. People writing reviews and sending us emails and things. And to my knowledge, I don't think we've had anybody report to us their negative experiences. Whether that means that people who have them aren't talking about them, or whether it's quite a small ratio, of people who actually have that kind of experience. I'm guessing, like you said, it hasn't been, maybe there's not enough research yet, but do you have any idea of what the numbers might be in terms of like the ratio of people who have a negative compared to a positive experience or a neutral experience?
That's a good question. There are some studies. So there's a good study. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but there's a study by Marco Schlosser, and it's about the adverse. What was the term he used? Adverse experiences, maybe related to meditation. So that they had basically one question about. I think it was something like, "Have you ever had an adverse experience related to your meditation?" And that was a big online survey. They had over 1,000 people answer that, and they give percentages of people who answered that and the different types of experiences related to that too. I can't remember the exact percentage. I don't want to say it because I'll probably get it wrong, because I haven't written that down. And then the study by Farias. I think it was in a region of 8%, maybe, Farias's finding, something like that. But have a look at those studies. The Schlosser study is a good starting point, and that'll give you an idea of what they found. But it's a good question, isn't it? It's a good question. Do people freely talk about those things? And that's a question I don't have the answer to. I mean, it's a good question. I think maybe the question just needs to be asked. And once it becomes maybe normal to talk about it, maybe then we'll kind of understand a little bit better. What the situation is.
Okay, cool. So what are your future plans? Do you have any ideas about research into other areas of mindfulness away from adverse effects?
At the moment, I'm just trying to focus on my PhD and get, I mean, there's so many different there are so many different topics you could explore related to meditation. So at the moment, I'm keeping an open mind and just seeing kind of where this path leads me. So yeah, I kind of I wouldn't want to narrow it down too much.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess before we finish, just another reminder: if anybody wants to take part in this online study that Tim is running, then follow the link down in the description. Is there anything else you want to say, Tim, before we finish?
Well, I think I'll just say thank you. Thank you to the Medita Foundation for supporting this survey. It's been really, really helpful. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us as well. It's been really interesting.
No problem. Yeah, my pleasure.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen.
No problem. See you later.
Cheers. Take care.